platforms. It's almost like our, our virtual symposium. And, there's a gentleman on here, Thomas Magnuson, that I was joking around with before that really kind of started this whole process, a long time ago in Sweden. And I've known Thomas probably for 20, I don't know, gosh, man, I'm old, probably about 25 years. And, he was, just as I was a mentor to you, Justin, Thomas was a mentor to me. And, a lot of the things that I learned and the way that I was thinking had this European influence. Some of you don't know, but actually my whole family is Swedish. Valley doesn't sound like a very Swedish last name. But we would always spend every summer over in Sweden, and I played my junior hockey there and later played pro. So he was, I'm a big believer that you have to find your tribe, right? You have to find kind of the group that you belong to. And that's really what is being built right here, right? We're all kind of a tribe. We all think alike and have the same passions, and, we're interested in a lot of the same things. And, that's, again, when I was over in Sweden, you kind of find your tribe, you find your people that help you kind of get to the next level. And, it was a cool thing that what Thomas has kind of started, and I feel like it continues to evolve every month. And Justin, you've done a great job with that as well. The other thing too, with your Lift the Mask, I think that's, incredibly important, and it's such a good thing that you're doing. I think in today's world, we're all dealing with different challenges. And I don't think that ever stops. I've been fortunate enough over the last 12 to 18 months, start working very closely with the Navy SEALs. And even some of those guys that are the toughest human beings that you'll ever meet, they also have challenges, right? So, I love just the simple message of, it's okay not to be okay. So kudos to you, Justin, on starting that, and everybody who's supporting that. That's really, really awesome. So my background, just to give a brief introduction before I get into the questions, sorry, that Justin posed to me, was I obviously I played pro hockey for 6 years before I kind of fell into the coaching world. And that coaching world for me was something that, to be honest with you, I'd never really thought about getting in. As you look at how coaching has evolved over the last decade, it's really changed. I mean, it's gotten incredibly competitive. A lot of people want to do it. I think the education has gotten so strong as well. So for me, when I got involved, it was actually, I'd gone back to finish my schooling, and I got a phone call from a guy named David Poyle, and David is the GM of Nashville. He had asked me, and it was Mitch Korn who had teed it up, but David had called and said, "Hey, would you consider working for us and taking care of our minor league team, which is in Milwaukee?" And originally I was like, gosh, I don't know. I don't really know if I want to go through that. I'm at the University of Wisconsin right now. I'm helping them, and I'm having fun working with, some of the goaltenders there. And in summertime, I'd work with some pro guys. But decided to finally, David convinced me to do a part-time job with Nashville. And I did so. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to jump into that scene. The people in Nashville were unbelievable, and then I kind of went the route of getting asked to come down to Dallas. So I still live here in Dallas. I was with Dallas for 8 years. Many of you probably know my story by now, but I had gone through a little bit of a difficult time with my health, and decided after 8 seasons that it was time to focus my attention on other things, on being a dad, being around for my kids. And, I'm, as Justin knows, a thinker. I like to start a lot of different projects. So I've been involved in a lot of different companies. One of the coolest projects, though, that I was involved with was actually one of the most, I would say, rewarding, has been anything that helps people and helps, kids. And the Power Within kind of was the first thing that I did that really left an impact. And even to this day, it's so cool to reach out to people and just hear the stories of how that book, really made a difference in their careers and their lives. And there's a lot of these young goalies now that are in the NHL that, they were young kids when they were reading this book, and and it played a role in their development. I always say played a role because there's a lot of different influences that have to happen in order for somebody to kind of, rise to the top. And, if our book played a small little fraction of helping them somewhere along their journey, that's a pretty cool thing. So a couple huge announcements. The first is that the Power Within, we're kind of call it the Power Within 1. It's a little bit of a teaser. It's actually an educational high school course now in Alberta. Over the past 6 months, we've gone down this path where it's actually gone through the whole Alberta Ed curriculum. It's been looked at and dissected, and they've actually turned it into a course. So what's neat is if you're in grades 10, 11, or 12 now in Alberta, you can actually take the Power Within, which is totally free, and earn 3 credits in school. So that's a real neat thing. We believe it's going to expand into different provinces. But for Justin and I, that's just something really kind of neat. We never thought when we put pen to paper, 7 years ago, that this would actually be a course in Alberta. So that's really, really neat, and just something that we're excited about. Ted, thanks for the congrats. Appreciate that. So goalie coaches, goalies, if you know anybody that is a goaltender in Alberta, just do us a favor and kind of spread the word, and they can just direct message Justin or I, and we can show them how to get started with that. The second thing is that we're actually coming out with the Power Within 2. So we kind of looked back at some of the chapters, and a lot of the goaltenders that we interviewed, they no longer play. So some of these young kids that are now reading the book, they have no idea who some of these goalies were. So we wanted to not redo the book. We wanted to build or write an extension of the book. So what we've done is we've reached out to a lot of younger goaltenders. Cal Peterson. Cal's a guy that I've worked with since he was 9 years old. I remember shooting hockey pucks at him, hitting him in the collarbone, and he'd be crying. Now he's an NHLer. You have Connor Hellebuck that's agreed to be in the book. We have Frank Hu in Colorado who's going to be in the book. And I'm working on a couple other ones. And yes, we're going to have female goalies as well. We want to wait till we get the 2 thumbs up on them, but we have a couple females that we've talked to. So we're really excited about including that. We also have some additional goalie coaches that have made a mark since that last book. So we're really, really excited about that. And again, this is something that we did that I've called my passion project, and it's probably the same thing for Justin. So for everybody on this call that's been part of it, he is, or can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for being part of that experience that we've gone through. And a lot of you guys, or some of you, were actually included in the book. So thank you for that. So those are our kind of 2 big major announcements with the Power Within. And yeah, Justin, we'll see what the next chapter ends up being for us.
Yeah, for sure. It's awesome. And some of the questions you guys are asking, we'll get to them later, because we want to make sure, again, we get a chance to talk about, mental performance and elite goaltending, and answer some of your personal or specific questions. But just like we've done the last 6 weeks, I'll ask one kind of pretty generic question. And then starting now, why don't you guys go ahead and start asking questions in the chat room, and Nick and I will do our best to go in order. And the first question I have for you, Mike, is of all these elite goalies that you've coached over the years, maybe not even the goalies that would maybe be labeled an elite goalie, but still had some unbelievable talent. What are some of the behavioral traits or the mental skills that you saw consistently in a lot of the goalies, or all the goalies that you worked with at the highest levels?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a great question, because I could probably talk about it for hours. But if I was to sum it up into one thing, it's probably just their burning desire to learn. That's been the biggest thing. Like some of these best goaltenders, even when you look at older goaltenders that we've worked with, like when Jimmy Howard came to camp in summertime in Madison, Wisconsin, I think, Thomas will remember. I mean, I remember Jimmy yelling, he's like, "What's up? What's an RVH?" Like you had no idea. So, there's a lot of things where these elite guys, they're good, right? They're going to be really good, quite frankly, with or without goaltending instructions, because they will themselves to being good, right? You look at just their appetite to always look at things and say, well, what can we do better? Why do you do this? And they don't just follow the crowd and do something because everybody else is doing it. They really kind of internalize it and think to themselves, like, what is it? What is it that I can do differently? The other thing too is that I think some of the best goalies, and this is, remember, I've worked with Jimmy, who is a bigger guy. I've worked with Timmy Thomas, and Timmy is one of the guys. Probably, he's such a good friend of mine, and we talk all the time. We chatted yesterday, and I was probably one of the few people that continued to talk to him when he went on his little hiatus from the hockey world. But I think it's, we're quick to label goalies, right? Big, small, quick, not quick, aggressive, not aggressive, whatever. And we also are quick to make our opinions when we're looking at goalies in goalie practice. Wow, this guy's smooth. Look at him transition. Look how he did this, blah, blah, blah. But really, like the best guys, when they drop the puck, they have an ability to raise their game, right? Their compete level is so high. Their ability to dissect or connect the dots in front of them is unbelievable. And that's where, the young Mike Valley goalie coach, who would think maybe he knows, all the information you need to know about technique and the latest this and latest that, right? Sometimes that young Mike Valley didn't know what the older Mike Valley knows now, which is like, wow, some goalies, they just, like I said, when they drop the puck, they just know how to play the game, right? They have, it's almost like an extra sixth sense. They just feel the game. They see the game differently, right? The game slows down for them. And like I said, they have this uncanny ability to compete and to also, like I said, just digest information, which is pretty amazing. Sorry for the long-winded answer on that.
That's all right. So Taylor Carey is asking you to briefly highlight the story you told a few years ago in Madison about the campfire at the bottom of with the guy who was playing guitar. You said, can you briefly highlight the story and the importance to you in your career or life at that point in time?
Yeah, it's funny because that's actually a pretty interesting story. I think about a lot. So basically, I'm a big believer that, I'm pretty, I would say, approachable person. And I also believe in, like, when you can kind of get rid of all the clutter in your mind, that you have the ability to connect with people differently as well. So the question was being asked there. So I went to, I was in Arizona, and I was heading out to the Grand Canyon to go camping. And my buddy and I went camping in Sedona, Arizona, which is one of the most spiritual places that there is. If you haven't been there, it's a must. It's unbelievable. And we go camping, and later at night we build this campfire. We're sitting around having a couple drinks, and this big dude is on the campground next to us, and tattoos all over the place on his face, head, everywhere. And it was interesting because he's standing there and he goes, "Hey man, can I join you guys?" And we were like, "Sure, come on over." He comes and he sits down, and he's got his guitar, and I said, "You get a guitar? Can you play?" And he goes, "I'm all right." So he whips out, I go, "Can you play something for us?" He goes, "Yeah, man, no problems." So he starts playing, and he's unbelievable, incredible. I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy? And he goes, "Oh, my name is Vino." And back then, I think it was like the X Factor. I think it was the show with Simon Cowell. And Vino was like, I don't know, the third to last guy knocked out. Just an unbelievable guy. And I was like, man, like that is incredible. And he's, good friends with Demi Lovato and, all these kind of stories and all these people that we kind of both knew. And, we sat down and we just connected. And it was really nice to see, okay, here's a former goalie and goalie coach that's trying to pursue like a level of eliteness. But here's also a singer that's trying to do the same thing. And I said, man, why do you come hang out here? And he's like, because there's no distractions. He's like, if I'm in LA, there's crap going on all over the place. He's like, I get away from it all. He's like, it unlocks my mind and creativity comes out. And, I thought it was such a cool story. And Vito and I have, we've continued to chat since that day. And again, just almost like, not to get too spiritual, but he's almost like a higher level, right? There was a purpose of us coming together. So it was a really, really cool story and a really kind of impactful time in my life because it almost changed the way I thought a little bit as well.
The next question is from Vic, and they want to know, how important is a routine to maintaining emotional control after giving up a goal, and how can a young goalie develop this routine?
Really good question. So first off, I think there's a difference between routine and superstition, right? Superstition is something that I believe is a lot of us have it, right? I'm going to put my skate on like this. I'm going to, after it gets scored, I'm going to spray the bottle and, watch the droplets fall or whatever it is. But if that superstition doesn't happen, it can be harmful to you as well, right? It can affect the way that you think. I think routine is something that brings comfort, right? I think routine is something that you say, okay, I've been here before. I've seen this story. I've watched this movie. I know that I'm going to get scored on. I know that a crappy goal is going to go in, whatever it is. And I think routine is almost like, I like to look at it as your anchor, right? So as a goaltender, you would have an anchor. And I'll give you an example, totally ungoalie related. Clint Bruce, one of the biggest badasses out there, Navy SEALs, right? And his anchor is, he says, hold fast, right? And that hold fast saying has meaning to him, right? Like when he says hold fast, it triggers all types of emotions and feelings that come right back into him. And Ted Monick, who made the comment earlier, would be really good to help explain some of this stuff later on. But basically what it is like being able to hold on to something, right? When the seas are rough all around him, to be able to hold fast and know that you can hold on to that and be strong. When a bad goal goes in and you have your routine or your anchor, right? Whatever that is, knowing that when shit's rolling all around you, that you can still bring yourself back to this, to this one spot. And for me, that's what that is. Routine brings confidence. Oh, thanks, Ted. Said I nailed it. That means a lot. So routine brings confidence. Routine brings it brings you a level of just feeling that I got this, right?
All right. Yeah. And I think, the follow-up question was that how does a young goalie develop this routine? And I'll just speak on this real quickly. I think it's important for goalie coaches out there to empower the young goalies to discover it for themselves. Everyone's going to have a different routine develop over short periods of time, long periods of time. Your routine's going to change. You're not always going to do the things that you do every single game, every single day. So just empowering the goalies to be able to develop it over time. It's not something that can be rushed. And sometimes it just takes that experience to really discover what works for you and what doesn't. And that's a lifelong process. So I just wanted to help.
And it doesn't have to be copied either, right? Like when we're younger, we see somebody doing something and we want to copy that. We see Bob Borowski sit on a stick. We see Holtby spray water. We see Carey Price do this. I mean, it's got to mean something to you, right? It's your anchor. It's got to be authentic and be something that really, like I said, pulls in all those feelings and emotions. And, so you want to do it because there's a purpose behind it.
Andrew is asking, do you think that compete can be coached or instilled, or do kids have to have that fire in them before you find them?
Gosh, that's a good question. That's a good question because I've had kids before or goalies before where I'm like, gosh, like you are so skilled, like just care, compete, like want that thing. And then I've seen goaltenders that aren't as skilled, but just have that level of compete where you're like, man, like this, they love it, right? Jack Campbell, a ton of compete in his game, right? To the point where it was criticized because people would say, "Oh, he's overworking, he's moving too much," right? I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. I believe it's something you're born with, and I maybe wouldn't have. I don't think that it can't be developed. I believe you can develop it, but I believe it's something that like you have. And I look at my two daughters, right? Um, Madeline, she's 16, and she is programmed like the complete opposite of what her dad is, right? Me. Uh, she just kind of wants to swim because swimming feels good, right? She wants to hang out with her, be with her friends. It's fun. Emily, who is 14, is wired like me. She can't lose. Like she hates losing. And she's in track and she just wants to literally I'm scared of her when she's ready to run, right? That's how dialed in she is. So I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. But I'm sure it can be developed. I think it's maybe the surroundings that you grew up in as well. But Ted makes a point here too. Like it can be cultivated for sure. So great question.
Mike, wife wants to know how can he build his mental toughness? And he said in general, like how can he become a mentally tougher goalie?
Oh, you know what the answer is? There's no shortcuts. This is experience. I think that experience is you need to get kicked in the teeth so many times and just keep getting up, right? That's just the reality of it. Mental toughness comes from scars, I believe. Mental toughness comes from knowing that you can get through something. Mental toughness comes from having that coach when you're younger that everything that goes in is your fault, right? It's the ability to continue to, fight through these little things. And while you're going through them, by the way, they don't feel little, right? But it's like just the guy that won't go away. And, I will, I'll say that, with being around some of these SEALs, which has been really cool because my whole life was around hockey players, right? So now it's around, these Navy SEALs or hotshot firefighters or whoever it is. And it's just like they all have the same thing, which is like, you can kick me as many times as you want, but at the end, you're going to get tired because I'm just going to keep getting back up, right? And it's almost like they're saying, I'm going to outlast you. That's all, right? So I think that learning mental toughness, although I think hearing people talk about it and sharing stories and you being able to kind of add that to your war chest, and kind of draw for it. But I still believe that that's one of the reasons why goaltenders become, better with age, because they've just gone through so many situations and they just won't go away.
Good one. Luke is asking if you could share your thoughts on life during coaching, then after your health issue, and now. He says, I think it's important for everyone to hear how hockey isn't always like your life all the time.
Oh God, that's a great question too. So anybody that knows me, like I'm all in, right? If you say that we're going to go, climb the biggest mountain in the world, I'm all in. Like we're going to go. And if we're going to, go in and you're going to coach this team, like I'm all in. And that's the way that I've always operated. I don't always know if it's the healthiest thing, right? So for, obviously Luke knows my story a little bit. So I went in and, coaching with the Dallas Stars and we went through a lot of different coaches. And, when you're inside the NHL, it's not as sexy as everybody thinks it is from the outside, right? It's cool. It's really neat. There's great people, but everybody in there faces the same challenges, and it's just not like it's not like it looks like Hockey Canada every single night, right? Hockey, or something that's featured on NBC. So you get in there and you're like working away, and like you play in Chicago, game's over, you get on the flight at 11 o'clock, you land back in Dallas at 1:30, 2 a.m. You're back at your house by 2:30, 3 a.m. You wake up at 6 and you go to the rink and you grind it away and you don't leave until the, GM and coach and everybody's left, and you just keep going and going and going. And that's your days, right? They just kind of go, and you're living what I felt was difficult is you ultimately don't control your own destiny, right? You can give everything that you have and coach as much as you want, but at some point, athletes have to play. I used to say, we don't sit up in the press box and we're not a puppeteer, right? We're not telling our goalie to move in and out or sideways. But when you're younger and you're kind of in it, you believe that you have control of everything, right? And I think that's tough when you think that you can control every situation. So as I was going through that, it's almost a blur, right? It's like hockey season starts in August when the team gets together. It's like you go underwater. And then all of a sudden, when you come up to catch a breath, it's like June. And you're like, what on earth happened, right? And for me, life smacked me in the face pretty hard. I went through some changes in our family. And then I had what was believed to be a thing called Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever, which is like Lyme disease. So that was about, a year and a half that I just felt like death. And then right towards the end of that, I got hit with heart issues and got a phone call to go into the emergency room. And I remember my wife, had talked to the doctors and they knew that there was something real serious going on, and she didn't tell me. I go into the emergency room. There's 6 cardiologists in street clothes. Right at that point, I said to myself, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here? I have given my life to, this team, which I'm proud of. And I'm so thankful for all my opportunities with Dallas and an amazing group of people. But I kind of forgotten about taking care of my own backyard, right? Which was my family. And at that point, I said to myself, I need to change. I need to change. I need to get out of this. And I remember going to Jim Nill and saying, Jim, I just can't do this anymore. I need to take a break. I need to be a dad. He said one of the kindest things to me. He's like, Mike, we need more people in the world like you. And it was cool. So, what that did for me is, I often say, it gave me the gift that I wish I could share with everybody else, but hoping they don't have to go through it, right? So, but when you do get through it, now I've been through it I've been out for 3-4 years now. You start seeing things a little bit clearer, right? You realize that hockey isn't the be all end all. It's a game, right? I think the quicker you can get to that and almost like compartmentalize your life a little bit, I think you become better, right? I really do. I think, and even looking back as a goalie, I think I would have been better if I knew how to leave the game at the rink, right? And that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing for people to go through and start understanding. And, we want to drive and be the elite and work so hard, but you have to be able to, to have this sense of balance in your life, right? You have to be able to have a different hobby. When I used to ask like our draft picks, hey, what's your hobby? Hockey. Oh yeah. What do you do when you get home? I study hockey. Okay, cool. Like, what about playing a guitar, right? Or having a different sport, or, whatever it is. I think you have to have that, because then when you do come to the rink, you can pour your energy and be really mentally sharp. And I think that's a lesson that I had to really learn, not only as a goalie. And I think I would have been, I had a little cup of coffee, a tiny little sip in the NHL, but I think I could have done much better if I knew how to handle that skill. And then as a coach, the same thing. If I ever do decide to go back and do something in the NHL, I think I'm going to be a lot better at that, because then like every loss isn't sitting on your shoulders, right? You know how to kind of like brush that off. Yes, there's, Mark Crawford used to tell me, Vals, there's winning and there's misery. There's nothing in between. And he was so right. Because that's how it is in the NHL. You win, everybody's happy. You lose, and it's like, I won't tell you which goalie coach said this, but he called me. He's like, Vals, we've lost like 3 games in a row. We might as well just do a nosedive with this plane right into the mountain. Like, that's how it feels. And, that's where, I do believe that balance is such an important thing. So kind of went all over with that answer, but
it's all good. Nick, I think we're on Kirk's question.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
First question.
So I'm gonna rip through this one. So Kirk is basically asking, when it comes to working with younger goalies that may have that intrinsic motivation, but they're afraid to make mistakes because they're worried about being ridiculed or judged. Um, during games they might be incredible, but practices they seem kind of unmotivated on the surface. Like, do you have any tips to help them embrace that growth mindset?
Ooh, that's a difficult question for me to answer. I think everybody is so different. I think that there's no like right or necessarily wrong. I think at different stages of your career, you're different. I think like if you're genuinely just a really good person, and you're the kind of what everybody thinks about as a team, right? You're out there and working as hard as you can. I don't think you can ever be faulted for like trying hard or wanting to be good or whatever it is. I mean, you just have to learn how to accept to be you. And it's tough when you're younger, saying like, hey, what I am right now, how I act, how I play is perfect. That is just the way you're supposed to be right now. Because as you grow, you're going to change and you're going to take different paths. And, I think it's just kind of accepting, hey, this is who I am right now. I'm not going to try to change and be something else for somebody else, right? I'm going to be me. And let's see if how many people come with me on this ride.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just the way you have to be.
Yep. And Katie, who's a regular here, she asked kind of the opposite scenario. Like, she's really loose in practice. She has a lot of confidence. And then when it comes time to games, she gets nervous. She's worried about letting her team down, letting herself down, and the anxiety starts to take over. So any tips there?
Yeah, that's and you know what? Just so you know, Katie, like that is 99.9% of goalies how they feel, right? you feel like this, right? You sit in the dressing room and your teammates are all joking around and having a great time and throwing tape at each other, and you're like, guys, like the game starts in like 5 minutes. If there's a 2-on-1 to start the game, it's on me, right? Like, get your stuff together, be ready. But that's just not how we can be as goalies. We don't say that, right? So we put all this pressure on ourselves, like we got to be the best, and that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. You chose this position because it's hard. Like, it's really, really hard, right? And you are basically, you're every day. So people are gonna walk out of the rink and they're gonna know your name, right? Because you were either great that game or you weren't that good that game, whatever the case, right? But I think I believe that when goalies become really good, I'm going to try not to swear here but they get to the point where they just say, you know what? I just don't give up anymore. I don't care. I'm just going to go out and play the game, right? And when you can get to the point where you just play the game, right? And you let the game come to you and you don't force it. You have to think of it as like, it's crazy. It's almost like energy levels, right? And as soon as you start like over trying, I want to win this game so bad because of my teammates and do this and do that, you start over trying. And you start over trying, your muscles tense up, your brain slows down. And you're like, what the heck? How did that go in, right? And then you try harder and it just gets worse and worse and worse. You almost have to just say like, you just let go and play. Just let go and play and be like, you know what? There's no cheating the game, right? There's no like last minute studying. You've put in your time because you've worked your tail off. You've done all the necessary things. When the puck drops, you can just say, you know what? Let's let my talent take over. Let's just play, right? And I believe that there's a lot of people that will probably nod their heads, and goalie coaches that used to be goalies before, they're just like, man, yeah, maybe I wanted it so bad that your skills just couldn't come out, right? It's like you had a stranglehold on your skills. When you learn to just trust yourself and play, man, that's when you become really, really good.
Yeah, we the past few weeks we've shown an image of the Chinese finger trap, where two fingers are stuck, and it's like the harder you try, sometimes you can't try harder.
You can't try harder.
Yeah,
you can't try harder. I mean, it just doesn't work. There's a million analogies, but golf. What happens if you go out and try harder in golf, right? You end up shanking it. I mean, it looks like my game in golf, right? So like, you just have to like chill out, and let things happen. And that's when you get dialed into that sweet spot, right? And when you find that sweet spot, that's when mind, body, spirit, all these things start working together. And that's an incredible place to be.
So shifting gears back to a coaching question. This is from, I believe, Peter in Slovakia. He's asking, how did you manage the failure of your goalies as a goalie coach?
Repeat the question. How did I manage what?
How did you manage like the failures of your goalies as a goalie coach? Like, did you feel like you took that a lot, personally?
Oh yeah. No, I take that really personally, and it's sometimes tough, right? It's sometimes tough, and you learn to recognize too that, like, I'll give you an example with Jack Campbell. Love the kid. Start working with him long before, our time with the Dallas Stars. Jack would come into Madison. I think he was 17 years old, and, maybe even 16, and we'd train. I wanted nothing more for this kid to succeed, right? And it was kind of like, Cal Peterson's the other kid that started with me when he was 9, and you just want it so bad for them, right? And I remember when I was in Dallas, and this is really like, you got to remember, Mitch Korn and I were kind of one of the first teams that actually had two goalie coaches, right? Like, where Mitch was in Nashville and I was in Milwaukee, and we just got along perfectly, and said the same thing. Well, when I was in Dallas, I wanted to go down and see Jack. Like, I wanted to, but we had Kari, and Kari was a guy that needed a lot of attention. And I was told that, you're to stay in Dallas, right? So I could maybe go see Jack, once every 4, 5, 6 weeks, right? And you could do stuff on the phone and talk to him and talk about video, but it's not like being there, right? And, you take a guy like that under your wings, and he's under in your organization, and you just want to be there to help him. But at the same time, it was like, I remember Lindy Ruff came in. Lindy's like, you're not going anywhere. You stay here. So, those are the stories that you kind of like, man, like I wanted to be there for Jack, and wanted to do more for him. And we would do things in summertime. But he was still such a young guy where it was like, yes, technique had to continue to evolve, but Jack was a guy that like had incredible skill, just really needed to feel that, hey, somebody's on my side here and is going to help me kind of navigate some of this road. Right. So yeah, you take on, same thing with Kari, right? Like, Kari came to me after an injury in Atlanta. And we kind of, everybody had written him off, and we kind of got him back into this place where he was healthy and enjoying the game, right? A lot of things with Kari was just getting him to love the game again. And so yeah, you feel like, and with Kari, it was insane, right? Like, I almost knew every day, like, how he felt and what we had to adjust. And it was almost like fine tuning a car, right? And you just knew, like, okay, I got to do this, or, man, the car's not on today, so we got to try to shift this. And yeah, it's like you take tremendous amounts of like what they're going through, and you're putting it on your shoulders. And again, forgot to kind of take care of myself there for a while. So yeah.
I think the next one is from Kat Silverman. I'm just going to read this straight because
I've never met Kat, but I've read some of her stuff. She's some really, really great stuff.
Yeah, Kat's awesome. She was a huge help in Breckenridge last year, and does a lot of great stuff, promoting hockey in Arizona.
Yeah.
So her question is, as a coach, what type of feedback should you be looking for when cultivating that mental toughness in your players or goalies? She says there's a fine line between helping expose them to different situations that can help them cultivate toughness and breaking them down, especially for younger goalies. So what kind of signs do you look for when you're on the right side of that line? And then what kind of feedback do you appreciate from goalies to show you're kind of on that right track?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, because I think, again, that every goaltender is so different, right? And you got to remember, when you go out on the ice, sometimes you have two totally different goalies that you're working with. So the messages that you send aren't always the same to this, to your goalies, right? You have to like hit one guy hard, right? And then you got to like protect the other guy. And I think that what I believe that I always tried to do was what I said, the power of belief, right? If I could get the goalie to believe that he was good, right? Maybe even, give them a little extra confidence and say, like, really boost that confidence and really boost that power belief. Power belief, when you believe you can do something, man, is that powerful, right? I also think, though, that there's times where I was too soft, right? I do believe that even though everybody is, you're sometimes at the point where you're like, you're protecting your goalie. You go in the coach's room and everybody's kind of like crapping on your goalie, right? How does this go in? I mean, that's just a reality of a coaching room. Wait until you guys, experience that in the NHL or whatever. It's just how it is, right? How does this go in? What is he thinking here? Blah, 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 right? And for so long, like, you protect your goalie. And your goalie needs to feel that. He needs to know that, like, that that you have his back, right? There's times, and I believe in that setting, you always should, like, always. If it's a bad goal, it's a bad goal. That's not your goalie's fault. That's hockey. That happens, right? So there doesn't always have to be like sides either. It can just be like, yeah, that was a bad goal. And if I brought in my goalie, he'd think it was bad too, right? I've never met a goalie that was happy with any goal, quite frankly, right? So I think also that there's this balance. But then I think as a coach, you have to have that ability to have that, like, tough conversation with a goalie, right? Because there's times when maybe he doesn't feel it or she doesn't feel it, but you have to, like, foot on the gas and push harder and recognize that, like, hey, this isn't easy. You chose a hard position. I chose a hard position to coach, right? And, like, it's not always flowers and daisies and everything's going to be all right. Sometimes there's, like, guys, we got to control our kind of spectrum, right? And do what we can and not worry about this or that, or what should our defenseman do, or this guy wasn't ready. Like, we have to control us. And, I think there's this real fine balance with holding accountability is, I guess, what I'm saying, right? So there's just a real fine balance in that. And there's things that I think in general, I'm probably just a nice person, I would imagine. And I hope people feel that way, but, like, I think sometimes it's good to be a little bit tougher as well. So there's a balance in everything.
I'm going to skip over. Luke had a good question about similarities between goalies and Navy SEALs, but I'll skip that one because I really want to get to this question from Emily, who's asking, she's noticed with college goalies in particular, the whole what now feeling after playing competitively. Do you have any tips regarding coping with that or using it as fuel to grow?
Oh man, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of us are in that, especially guys that have been just grinding away, or girls that have just been putting their whole life's effort into this, and then it's over, right? You didn't make that junior team. You got cut. Something happened. But I think you have to remember that, like, everything that you're doing now is a skill, right? Work ethic, communication, leadership, everything that we pull from goalies, and, like, situational awareness, accountability, confidence, the list goes on and on. That when you are then put into another environment and you find a different passion, for me, it was like entrepreneurship, right? Then, like, I feel like, hey, I can step into this role. And even though I didn't go to Harvard or this or that, I know how to manage a room. I know how to get a team together and get us working in the right direction, right? There's so many skills that you learn from goalies as a goalie that, guys and girls on this call, whether you're coaching right now or whether you're a goalie, whatever path you decide to take, though, you don't start from ground zero again, right? It's not like, oh, okay, I got to learn something completely new. You're going in with, like, this incredible toolbox that is so powerful, right? Because you're like, I can manage this. Oh, everybody else is stressed out because this happened. No worries. I got it. I've been through this before, right? So there's so many things. And I think that that's, like, something that takes a while to kind of understand. It's like, you truly have to believe that everything that you were doing, right? Every weekday that you went at 6 a.m. to work at some cold rink in St. Louis or wherever you live was like, it's creating something, it's cultivating something, right? And maybe it didn't go the path that you thought it was going to go, right? But you're going to look back one day and be like, wow, like that was awesome. And I could not have done that without going through all the crap, all the good, bad, whatever times I did as a goalie, learning lessons, and gotten to this point, right? So I think it's incredibly important. You guys, I think everybody underestimates that, right? Everybody underestimates it, because one of the biggest shocks to me when I get into kind of real world is that, like, I find a hard time finding people that are able to keep up and work as hard, right? And be as focused and do things. So like the skills you guys are learning, man, those are things that, man, you couldn't pay for in an Ivy League school.
Yeah, I think a lot of goalies struggle with imposter syndrome when it does come time to that first professional job or first job out of college. But just like Mike is saying, it's amazing how these skills connect to the real world. And you don't think about it as workforce development when you're in the net trying to stop pucks. But being a goalie every day is definitely workforce development. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool message that Mike has, that like all these skills connect, and you don't start from zero when you finish playing hockey and you go to that first job, whatever the case may be. Like I look at Eddie Lack like right now, who's a real estate agent and was a goalie, but there's so many communication skills and so much perseverance and resilience that he's developed as a goaltender, going through what he went through with Vancouver and New Jersey and everything else, that will absolutely help him sell more houses as a real estate agent or whatever he chooses to do after that.
Right.
So I think that's an awesome message, Mike. We've got about 5 minutes left. I definitely want to make sure and get back to Luke's question, because Mike, I know, like you said, you've been working with a lot of Navy SEALs over the last year and a half. And Luke's question is an awesome way to kind of bridge that. Is, do you see similarities between like some of the goalies you've worked with and Navy SEALs that you're working with?
Oh yeah, guys, like I am so lucky here, and I'll gladly jump on here anytime and talk to this group and engage not only as a speaker but as a listener. But when I look at this group that I have in Dallas, and I call them my tribe now, right? So it's Clint Bruce, this Navy SEAL. Well, his best friend is a guy named Marcus Luttrell, and Marcus was in The Lone Survivor, if you guys have watched the movie, right? They end up bringing in a guy named Brendan McDonough. Look up Brendan McDonough after this call. So Brendan is, if you ever watched the movie Only the Brave, okay? Hotshot firefighter, went out with his team in Prescott, Arizona. He's the only guy that survived, right? They're going to make a Hollywood movie out of him. He calls Marcus Luttrell and says, Marcus, man, I'm the only guy that survived my team just like you, and they're going to make this movie out of me. Marcus is like, come to Texas, man. You can hang out with us, right? So they come in, and then all of a sudden they call this goalie coach guy, Canadian guy, and I get to be in this room and just see how these guys are interacting with each other and how the questions they're asking me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, gosh, I'm just honored to be in this room with you guys. But they're looking at it and saying, man, the stuff that you guys go through is incredible, right? So there's a lot of these similar things. And what I find is that, sometimes it doesn't matter what your occupation is, right? Goalie, Navy SEAL, hotshot firefighter, whatever it is, you're trying to pursue something. You're trying to pursue eliteness, right? And eliteness that's a rare breed. That's a real rare breed of people that have the ability to go after that, right? And when you find guys or girls that have that same way of thinking, man, you can just sit around them all day and you just talk and you support each other, right? And that's huge.
And one last question, just because it just dropped in, it's a good one, since we still have about 4 minutes left. Greg is saying there's a huge gap of understanding between goalie coaches and mental coaches and many head/assistant coaches. What mindset should a goalie have with a head coach that doesn't really understand the position and fully admits it? And he mentioned maybe a goalie that's like Bantam age level.
Okay, I'm just reading the question here again. What mindset should a goalie have, head coach? Okay, so here's the thing, guys. To be honest with you, at that level in your bantam, there's unless you have a coach that actually was a goalie, there's very few people that understand how it is to be in the net, right? And they don't see it, but we have to kind of accept that. There's nothing that you're going to say to kind of change that, right? So as frustrating as it can be, I think that sometimes it's maybe explaining things from your point of view and maybe what you would like to do. I think also what's really important is like I would have goalies that would be like, oh man, like my coach just sucks because we do these drills or practices and they're just not catered towards a goalie. Well, one of the most powerful things that I found is put yourself in that person's position, right? So now that coach is coming, he's worked all day, probably at some, job, and he comes to the rink and he's responsible for 22 people, not two, right? Not two goalies. He's responsible for 22 players, right? And now all of a sudden it's like, put yourself in their situation. And all you can do, you can complain about it. You can say it sucks. It's the worst drill. That doesn't make you better, right? You don't get better by complaining. You don't get better by saying he doesn't get it. You get better by trying, right? And making the most out of that. So you say, it's a 5-on-0 game. Great. Just be the best that you can be in that 5-on-0 game, right? You do everything humanly possible to make sure that you're doing your thing. Because the more that you give, the more you're going to get to, right? So the more your coach goes, man, like, good for you, goalie. Like, you just did everything for our team here. And now all of a sudden you can go back and say, great, well, I was wondering if maybe we could do something that helps me, right? So, I think it's very, very easy to lose patience. I think it's very easy to get mad. But I've never seen it work out when people do that. Like, I've only experienced it when you have a goalie that gives everything that they have. Cal Peterson was like that. Cal Peterson was just, man, he got on the ice and he was just so laser focused on being Cal that he never, like, ever did I see him snap at a coach or say this drill sucks or whatever. He just did the best that he could in that given time. And maybe he turned it into a little game in his head or something like that. But, that's kind of his approach. So I think it's just how you approach it, really how you approach it. We can go a couple more questions if you want, Justin.
Nick, I lost track, but there's good chat going on. And like, I just want to emphasize to everyone, like, again, a lot of new people this week, but also a lot of regulars. It's really cool now that we're 6 weeks into, doing these weekly chats. But isn't it interesting for those that have seen maybe more than a few, the consistency and some of the themes that keep coming up. And everyone's got a different answer. Mike's perspective is different than Andy Svard, who's another Swede that we talked to last week about the change state. And before that, we had Teddy and Mike and some of these other great mental skills coaches. But it's really just about knowing yourself inside and out and what can you do to motivate yourself on a daily basis to, again, like the first presentation I gave, get 1% better every day. And that's not just physically about your talent or your skills, but it's also just how you compete with yourself. How do you treat others? Do you show empathy with the coaches that you work with if they don't understand the position? Because like Mike is saying, and all these other great guests that we've had every week, you have to be able to challenge yourself every single day. It's that pursuit for excellence. It's that pursuit, that path for being an elite goalie that, that's why Mike and I wrote the first book, because everyone's got a different journey, but you see these consistent themes that start to pop up and it reemphasizes all these great kind of skills, behavioral skills, interpersonal skills, internal skills that we need to be the best version of ourselves.
I'll leave you guys with this one thing, if there's no more questions. And that's, to me, it's redefining success, right? People ask me, well, what makes a successful entrepreneur? What makes a successful goalie, right? And I think success is something that we look at and we say, well, we're only successful if we become get an NCAA scholarship or get to the NHL or, have a business that takes off and is really successful or, makes a lot of money or whatever you want to say. And I think really over time, what I've defined success is, do you wake up every morning and enjoy doing it? Right? And that's a simple thing to ask a goalie. Do you love going out on the ice? Do you love to stop hockey pucks? Do you love to compete? Do you love to play? Right? Does it make you happy? Are you passionate about it? Well, if it is, man, that's pretty successful, right? That's really successful. So I think sometimes we have to change that conversation because we put these ridiculous amount of expectations on your own self of what defines success, right? I don't think success is getting to the NHL. I think success is hey, like you did a great job playing as a goalie and worked really hard, and now you moved into another facet in life, and you're doing great, you're happy, right? So so yeah, that's that. I got my daughters coming over. We're gonna make some kebabs, but hey, wanted to thank everybody for your time on this call.
Yeah.
Really nice to see a lot of names that I recognize here.
Mike, real quick, where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you? Where can they find some of your stuff? Is there anything you want to drop before we cut this off?
Oh man, I was hidden for like 7 years. So you can find me now and at well, if you go on to Instagram or Twitter, just Mike Valley 100, and just follow me there or ping me and ask questions. And guys, honestly, if there's anything I can ever do, just let me know.
Yeah, and we're kind of cycling through some guests. Like we've had Teddy on a few times and Dr. Greg, and I'm sure Mike will jump back on at some point in the near future with us, especially now that we're on another journey together for the Power Within Part 2.
Exactly.
So thank you guys so much. Thanks to Mike for sure for spending an hour with us. As usual, I have this recorded. I made the same mistake as last week. I forgot to start recording when I started talking, but as soon as Mike started going, I mean, that's the important stuff anyways. So we got the whole hour with Mike recorded. Everyone will get a link to the YouTube on-demand video tonight or tomorrow. And again, we'll have another one next week. So thanks for joining, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe, and liftthemask.com for anything you need in the mental health and performance side for the goalie community.
Alberta goalies, reach out to me if you want to take this course. We'll get you started. And man, I wish I could take a course like that when I was in school.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Sounds good, guys.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks for joining, everyone. I think we hit almost everyone's questions, but, we'll have Mike on again. It's awesome to have, his experience and his story being told a little bit. Everyone else, yeah, take care. We'll have another one next week.